Okay, great to see you all. We've been chatting for like 10 minutes, but it was all off the record. But I wanted to start the recording because, okay, I just came from this presentation from a scholar from Princeton. It was great, talking about ravens and comparing sort of the things that we see in Tlingit Raven stories with other, particularly like biblical references. And at some point, there was a group of us who were talking about these ravens in the courtyard in England. I don't know what I'm talking about. So if anybody knows about this, let me know. And apparently, like the monarchy in Britain says, like as long as these ravens are in this courtyard, the the kingdom will be strong. But they clipped the wings of the ravens. So I was like, of course, right? We're like they can't leave. So, um, anyways, welcome. Uh, we're gonna look at a couple of things today. We're gonna get a couple of presentations from students. We're gonna talk about the Paul Creek methodology a little bit more. And then we're going to start collaborating on final projects. So your final project is to each individually write a 30-year vision for the language that you are working in, not English. We're not working in English uh, for the indigenous language that you are working in. I'm pretty sure English will be fine. And then, but we're going to collaborate. So we're gonna sort of actually like lay out the outline of things for you to do. And the most important thing is this is you as an individual. And you're just sort of, we're tapping into your brilliance and your intelligence and your vision and your creativity and your strength. But that doesn't mean I'm asking you to go deliver this to the people. Like you're not going to drop it on the desk of the people and say, there, now you got to do that. But just sort of like thinking of the things that you see. And the thought is like eventually we're going to have such strong language programs that we'll be sort of doing this stuff on a regular basis. I think there should be a 5 year, like, there should be sort of like, what are we working on right now? Then there should be, what are we doing in the next 5 years? And then there should be, what are we doing in the next 10 years? And then there should be, what's going to happen 30 years from now? I do think that needs to be part of language planning. And I do also think that the the micro, the meso, and the macro also have to be part of language planning. But that's more along the lines of like, if you really want the languages to, if they're not at a place of strength right now, then you need to be an engineer of social change. And we're going to talk about that as well. But I saw a hand up. Doug Juice, did you have a thought or a question?
Well, I was just gonna add a little while back, you were talking about the ravens in the courtyard. And then if you said if anyone knows what I'm talking about, well, they're talking about the ravens in the courtyard of the Tower of London.
Yeah, well,
They,
that's it.
yeah, they've been there, well, for a really long time, and they hold a lot of significance, the ravens being there. And I've been to the Tower of London, and yes, the ravens are in fact in the courtyard.
Thank you for the clarification. I was just walking away thinking of it, and then I started talking about it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Which, now that we're in what, week 13 of the semester, right near the end, now you find out I don't know what I'm talking about. Ha ha ha. I'm just kidding. Um, okay, so we are getting near the end of the semester, which means we gotta keep our foot on the gas, right? We gotta don't let up yet. You're almost to the end. So like one of my primary jobs as an instructor is right around this time of year to say like you're almost there, but you're not done yet, right? Because sometimes when you do a class, you're just like you just see the end there. It's sort of like this. So I like to write poetry, and I'll share with you folks. I got a book of poetry that I'm trying to like get reviewed and published. And I got really bad reviews. I was really mad about it because this was one of the statements. They said to write poems in another language and to not translate it feels like 1960s politics. not of today. So I probably got like 40, 50 poems in there, and two of them are in Tlingit and are not translated. And so they're trying to give me like bad marks or whatever for not translating it into English. So I was really upset about the whole thing. But um, I was thinking of this. Why was I thinking of this? What was I just talking about? What did I bring up poetry for?
I was gonna do that for my English class because we have to write a poem too.
Right.
No, I don't want to.
And so like, well, it's interesting too. Like who are we doing this stuff for? There's always something to think about. Oh, now I remember. I remember what I was saying. Okay, so going back, the year was probably 1996. Maybe 19, yeah, maybe 1996. I had a poetry class at the University of Minnesota, and I was invited to go read some poetry on the radio. And I was talking to my teacher about it, and the teacher's spouse came in, and he was a poet as well. He's like, "What are you guys talking about?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go read poetry on the radio." And he says, "Don't swallow your last two lines." And I said, "What? You're pretty dramatic about that. What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, sometimes when you're reading your poetry, you could see the end and your voice just falls off because you're like, ah, you just kind of get to." And so that's my metaphor for you for the last 2 weeks of the semester, right? So like we got no class on Wednesday. Take some breaks, take it easy. Maybe start hammering out this final paper. You don't have anything left to read, although if you fell behind on any of your reading, try to do it all. Like there's really good stuff in there in terms of what we're trying to do. Uh, don't go into this whole thing without like being informed if you can. But then like finish strong. Try to finish strong and try to make that sort of your approach to the end of semesters because sometimes the work piles up, get tired, the days get shorter. It can get just real easy to say, well, I did what I could, and so, but also reach out, let me know if there's things that you might need that can help you. Remember, we have a writing center. You can set up an appointment. They can look at your writing, give you feedback before you hand it in. You could talk to me. There's all kinds of stuff. Even though I'm asking for like this 30-year vision, I don't want to feel like you're alone. Like we get the classes, these next few classes to go through this stuff, talk about ideas, compare notes, thoughts. You got to do the work on your own. Like I don't want you folks to collaborate and write one document for each language. I know we've done stuff like that in the past, but what I'm looking for here is your personal ideas on what should happen. And ask questions if you got them. But for now, we're going to turn it over. Let's see who wants to go first. We have two student presenters today. Who would like to go first? Okay, who's going to go first? How's that?
I'll go first. All right, just a little disclaimer. I'm home today with my kids, so you'll hear them. So when I was thinking about this midterm, what can we do to implement now? What can I do now? And the biggest thing that I hear from the community members is one, they're very happy that their kids are learning in school, but they don't know what their kids are saying. So getting that language in the home has been a huge focus for me. And then I also hear a lot of people say how they wish they knew what I was saying to my kids. And they like how just simple, I only have an arsenal of, a handful of phrases that I use with my kids all day, every day, use your words, put this in the garbage, don't do that, small, simple phrases that anybody could use and learn, I think, all the time, just to start. It's a great start, I think. So a lot of people ask me where to start. And they're like a lot of our classes, we talk about the shame of people not wanting to speak or embarrassment that their age, they don't want to go to a beginner's class because they feel they should know these things. They don't want to be a beginner. So there's all these factors. And my biggest thought is how do we get over that? How do we just get it into the home? Just get them, even if they're pronouncing it wrong, it's okay. Shove it in their face. That's what I do for myself. I print out vocabulary stuff that I was learning. I'd handwrite it on Post-its, whatever I needed to do. And I would just throw it up until it was in my memory. I didn't need to look at it anymore. I could just say it. And I tell people that advice all the time, but I think doing the work for them and making those flashcards, getting that language out onto the paper for them, having it ready, just put the tape on the walls, is kind of what would help in my mind. So I'll share what I'm thinking here. So I kind of have like a little kit. This could be broken down into little lessons, or just, I don't know how long it would take. I don't know, but I think basics of basics, the alphabet. You're not going to be able to read the words that are printed out on your house with confidence unless you know how the words sound or how to say them. The height of alphabet is. So this is not my poster. I'll just say that I borrowed this. And so I'm not recreating the wheel. This is what is up at Hunsinai. This is what the preschool kids see. This is what the kids in the school see. So I just kind of thought throwing together a kit for beginner home learners, this would be the basic, and it would go through all the letters. This one's a big one that's unique to just Haida. Printing these out, I wanted them printable, just ready to go, print right from home and be done. Put them up on your wall. So the next one was counting in Hudkill. The basics, Swanson, Stung, go just all the way through till 10. And then you can review. And then how to count in Haida, not just counting the rote numbers, but also explaining that when you do count an object, the number comes after the object, which is opposite of English. So I just put a little example of that in there. And then those are just the basics to get to here, kind of like building blocks. Then I figured after you could get the alphabet down and numbers down, you could start to see the words and practice. So each one of these, I was thinking, if you're a brand new beginner, preschool age, or have kids in the preschool age, this is kind of where I started with. So saying yes, saying no. Each one of these slides could probably be 1 week, I would say, to really get new vocabulary. I don't think you could just give it to someone once and then expect them to know it. You have to practice it. And if they can repeat this over a week and replace all the English for the Haida each week, and then just build on that every week. And of course, go through the Haida and teach it, but simple things like praise words. I try to think of basic phrases that you would use every day with little ones, or that are in the Hunsinai preschool age, and they come home. What would they maybe be used to hearing, or what would they recognize? Expressing sympathy. This one is said a lot in, yeah, that's a big one. Displeasure, knowing how to say, the discipline type words. Front door. See, in my mind, I'm trying to make little cards or printouts that you could put in different domains of the house and then build on that. So this one's the front door area. If someone's knocking on your door, who's there, come in. If it's multiple people, these are all built so you can have multiple lessons in each one. So like this katsla, that's for one person, but if there's multiple people, you'd have to pluralize it, istutla. So there's little lessons in each one as well. And then shutting the door and opening the door. Greetings, leave takings, those are all by the front door area. And then a window, This is one area where, especially on rainy days, you could use a lot of hog kill. Talking about the weather, talking about animals, talking about people going by, cars going by. This is where I use a lot of vocabulary and words and phrases with my kids. We spend a lot of time indoors with the rain here in Southeast. So we like to sit out, look out our window. You can ask them, what do you see? And, play games like that. So then there's some weather vocabulary here. These ones are all good days examples to use. And then bad days, bad weather. And then one for, this one is too big, so I had to put it on 2 slides, but this is washing your hands, which I thought was pretty important with COVID right now. So this one's 2 pages long. I'm gonna stop share. So that was my idea, kind of putting together a beginner kit for families with little ones, especially preschool at Hudson. One of the biggest questions I get is, I don't know what my kids are saying. Tell me what you guys are teaching them so I know what to say at home. So that was my main focus of putting together all of this. Slides. How?
Yanking Ulagan. Fabulous. So I got a thought because we're trying to do something real similar with Tlingit, and I feel like there's got to be like, I really like the idea of making templates. So like, here's the thing. Everybody just make your own version of the thing. Like the framework is there. Because a lot of our mission is to bring the languages home. So I do think like whether it's like a, what does it look like? Is it like a flip chart that we hang on the wall or like a series of index cards that are sort of spiral bound together? Because it's a question of like making it useful, making it accessible, and coming back to sort of some of the things we were talking about at the beginning of class, like we have to change our culture. We have to change the way we live when that means this sort of artificial process until we could naturalize it. It's like, I gotta go look up, take your boots off again. But it's fine because you do that enough times, then you're gonna have it. But just sort of like, because that's what we were thinking as well, is we made a book that had for every, here's language you could use in every room of the house, right? Like family language, right? Like maybe there's some future adult version, whatever. But what does that look like? I think that's where we kind of got stuck because we could there could be a big book, and then maybe there's these little, sort of like a field guide type of thing. Like I remember they used to make these for plants. It was like basically like little laminated index cards that are spiral bound. What do you folks think?
I like that idea, but also for me, it was hard. How do I get new vocabulary in there, not have the same ones? But also, I don't want clutter. I don't want something sitting out, but also, I'm not going to pack something around with me all day. I have babies on the hips and I got laundry and I have all these things. So for me, I don't have another solution, but for me, the best thing was just throwing it up on the walls. It looks very cluttered on the walls, but if it's in my face, I'm gonna run right to it, and then if I don't have something or if something new came up that I want, I'll just get a post it out, write it down and throw it up. And um, but yeah, that's my struggle too. I lose post-its, they fall down, the kids rip them down, they think it's fun, move them all around. So what do I do? And that's why I started this Google Slides too. I could just reprint them. I could go back. I was thinking, do we build them in level of how big the sentences are? How many verbs are in the sentence? How many parts are in it? Like, do we build with the simple 1 or 2 words for beginners, and then we could, okay, now look out the window. Instead of saying look outside, you could say look out the window, which is a bigger word. So my mind was spiraling too. I
I
don't know.
I like this idea of having like the starter kits, the intermediate kit, the advanced kit. So then it's like, yeah, because you might just say put on your shoes, but then you can say like put your shoes on. Your shoes are on the wrong feet. It's like we had to figure out how to say that one, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then we gotta get like some, like it's maybe a long shot, but maybe there's some funding we can get to start making like kind of smart houses. I just feel like it would be so neat if there was like, because I get this little thing I can say, hey, play this music, and it plays the music, and it's not smart enough to do it, but I could, if there could we like fund like a version made in our own languages, so we'd be like, hey, Hindi, what's that do? You're like, how do you say this? And then the house would just tell. But I think until we get that, I think yeah, putting them up on the walls. At some point, there's more phrases than wall space, but maybe it's sort of a dedicated flip chart that sits in one spot on the wall. But I don't know, what do y'all think? Great, it's good stuff. Suzu.
So this, I love what you're presenting and showing and sharing, and it just, inspires and excites. I love the idea, and I've always struggled with the idea of a framework and having the frameworks, having the little self-contained units that we can pull from and get ideas, because it seems like anytime we try to start, we'll end up picking something that we didn't think is hard. And then we just get discouraged and stop. And so I think if we had like a pool of bunches of little self-contained units to work to translate, work to learn, and have the multiple levels, I mean, and if the framework is there, then we can take whatever format we're going to need, and like Memrise and Anki and all these other programs that allow us to I mean, part of my struggle is how to label things so that when I have to go back and try to find it again, and how to look up things in Memrise and other apps for, anything that was in Inupiaq. I would, in the very beginning, I didn't know how to differentiate between North Slope and Northwest Arctic and Wales and Shish and all these places. And instead of being all excited, I would just stop. And so knowing how to label things in a way that they're searchable for people just starting, to know where they're starting from. So anyway, Alaska Native Heritage Center made an Inupiaq da Ilisaktun or something. Ilisakta Inupiaqtun. And it has like 50 little self-contained units of related vocabulary for scenarios like that. And I still don't remember to go back to it. So if we had guidance from people who have been trying as to these are some power units to allow you to use the language in life, like you're saying with the one by the door for the things you'll do as people greet, and like a kitchen one or a breakfast one. I love it. So thank you.
Hooray. Uh, our language nest had kits, and so did the Yakutat language nest. They had made kits to send home with families. And then the other thing too is like, how do we make this so that we have our target group, but then we say, yeah, this is available for everybody, And so these are some neat ideas and some wonderful things. Like the reality is like some families might just say thank you, and then they'll never look at it, right? But that's the risk we run, because you never know when they're going to answer the call to the language, right? And so that's the other thing too, is trying to figure out what you can do, and then trying to go beyond that to sort of say like, let's try and blow this whole thing up. Because if we, that's part of my thing, is sometimes if I spend too much time assuming that people don't want to do the thing, then I'm probably missing a whole bunch of people who probably do but are shy about it or have something going on. Okay. Excellent work. Great stuff.
I think it would be helpful as far as the posters and phrases go, for having a practice to go along with it. And I agree with Skanjat. I'm very tuned in with the visual appeal of my surroundings. And so if there's a lot of words and posters on the wall, I tend to walk right past it because I don't like the way it looks and it stresses me out. And so I think having a practice so that you maybe just have like one phrase, and then dedicate yourself to memorizing it and internalizing it and then using it. And I feel like if you can connect that practice and that habit with the poster, then you could take it down and replace it with your next one when you're ready for a new one. I think something like that might help so that you're not coming home to just like posters and posters of words covering your walls.
Yay. Yeah, because it can be overwhelming, and it can also just be, you know, sometimes you just want to take a break from everything looking like a classroom. But, you know, that's part of the world we live in. Okay. Tukshik A. It's your turn.
Alrighty, let me share my screen. Let's see here, where's that one? Okay, so, oh wow, my screen looks weird. Hang on. How do I move this little bar?
Oh, is it
It's like in the middle of the screen.
should really just click on it.
There we go. Okay, I got it. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know, I had a baby this semester. He's getting super cute, super chonk. He just turned 2 months yesterday. And since going on maternity leave for a few weeks, I found that it was really hard to like stay in the language, and I found that I forgot a lot of things that I thought that I really had ingrained in my mind, and it's like just using Hotkill every day was just a lot of work when like even just brushing my hair seems like such a big deal and like such a big task. So like just reverting back to the easy English was kind of what I did. But now that we're in a good routine, I have more time, and I really want to dedicate a lot more of my energy to replacing words and replacing phrases that I say to him in English and say them in Hotkill instead. So I'm kind of eons behind what Sanjat presented. But my idea is I made all of these little labels that I can print out and then just cut and then just tape them on things that we use every day. So things like his cradle, his bathtub, some clothing items, stuff like that. And then instead of saying, or just replacing those single words at first in English sentences, like, let's go get his Dajong instead of go get his hat. So yeah, that was the first part. And then I saw somebody, which I should find their name, but they are also learning their Indigenous language, and they had this amazing idea of getting that little My First 100 Words book and then replacing all of those words in their Indigenous language. So I ordered one of those books, but it is taking forever to come. So I just did 6 of these just to give you like a little visualization if you don't know what that book is. So little everyday items like his pacifier, or he is Eagle Clan, so Tzok, stuff like that. And then I think I have 80 something words right now that I want to make like a little booklet of my own, just like words kind of specific to Hotkill, things that probably will not be in the book that I ordered. But I still want to keep with that book idea. And I'm still compiling some of those single words that I want to put in that booklet. And then there are just these few little words that I just threw onto this same document so I could have it in one spot. just little everyday phrases. My stepdaughter, she loves to give high fives, and she just started at the immersion preschool in Heidelberg. So instead of saying high five, we say place digesta. And so that's one that we use a lot. Um, then I translated a bunch of phrases that I say to my baby every day. Like, are you telling a story? And then some funny little ones, like when I'm just like playing with him, I'm like, who's my little baby boy? Stuff like that. So instead of saying it in English, I'll just say it in Hudkill. And then this one I think is funny, Die Hagejuice Hunga, my stinky baby. I say that one a lot. um, and then then I thought, oh my gosh, why don't I just put this into an actual lesson plan for somebody to use in the actual classroom? Because our Hudkill teacher, Skill Jade, she said that she used to host like mother and child or parent and child nights in Ketchikan. And I forgot when she said that she stopped that, but just life happened for her and it doesn't happen anymore. And then reading about the was it the Maori from the breast readings that we had, either in this class or in Ida's class. I can't remember. They all blend together. um, but yeah, so I thought that that was like amazing. So yeah, just like maybe once COVID is over, and we can all meet safely and we can have some baby days again, I can use these lesson plans. So like some objectives and the materials that you'll need, and then the vocab that we'll go over. And then that is as far as I got on this lesson plan. um, and yeah, that is it. Still very much work in progress, and I'm open to any ideas, any feedback. Yeah, Jahala.
Yankegulagan. So wonderful. And congratulations. I know the mommy days are so taxing. So I'm so happy that that you're able to get this done and get back into things and just do you, just do baby time. So it's so wonderful to see. And I just want to say, like this thing that we're talking about, like bringing the language into the home and raising babies in the language, like that's the thing. That is the thing. And it's such a hard, it's very hard, and it's a very, like to sort of go as a whole language community, like 60, 70 years without raising children in the language, to move back to that is such a wonderful moment, but it's also so challenging. We got this whole panel of elders together and we're asking them all these questions, and next thing you know they start crying and they say, I don't remember how to say that, you know. And you start thinking about these folks being the last generation to be raised in the language, not just around it, but totally in the language. So there's probably going to be stuff that you might end up having to recreate or to sort of piece together, but go for it, especially as the community of language learners. Like really just do everything you can. And you also have time. Like you do have time. Like even if you say, oh, I could just do a word here and a word, that's fine. Because then you just keep pushing it up and pushing it up. And next thing you know, you're just sort of only talking in the language to that baby. And as that baby grows into it, you know, because their language skills really sort of, there's like this pretty incredible kind of 3-4 year window where you could do absolutely two languages, and that kid's gonna get them. Uh, but I also want to make sure that we know that that doesn't mean adults can't either. It just means like, so if you had a line that was time and a line that was fluency, when you start dealing with babies, like it goes zoom, but then it flattens out. And when you deal with adults, it starts flat and then it zooms up at some point. So just want to encourage you to keep going. I think that's amazing. Y'all have any thoughts?
I raised my son, Devin, in both languages, in Hadkil and Shamalia. And he passed me when he was about 2 years old. We were walking down the street and he would say, Goyigwa, what is that? And like I could say, oh, that's the snow, that's the tree. And he said, Goyigwa, a house. And I was like, Shikotu, I don't know how to say house. And when he got a little bit older, like 2.5, he would ask where the bears are. And I said, oh, Stakanu, the bears are sleeping. And he would try to wake up the bears in our language. I was like, Ein, don't wake up the bears. Yeah, so it's really adorable when the kids are raised in the language. Devin, he's outpast me like he could switch over to Hadkil like in a second. It will take me like an hour to finally figure out where the verb goes. So I love what you're doing.
How odd. Yeah, and I love how both these projects are really thinking about one is like, how does I need this to help me? And then two, this can help everybody. And so that's really amazing. And then to see, yeah, I thought I went to a language, and we also have to start bracing, start preparing ourselves for the world to open back up. Like I just think we're gonna get there at some point in terms of back to, I'm not gonna say normal because I think it's a pretty bad situation, and I don't want to return to say like let's go back to the way things were because I think there's a whole bunch of things that need to change, and especially in terms of equity and languages and stuff. But as far as, being able to get together and not have masks and stuff and have pretty safe gatherings and not have a lot of sickness around. But to sort of think about what things are going to be like and how we can start having get-togethers, because more and larger culture camps and language gatherings, and it's a bit of a tangent, but I want to share this idea that a friend of mine, Pat Race, shared with me. So what if every community, and especially like larger communities like Juneau and Ketchikan, and there's some people who are going to hate this. They're going to hate this. So people who own property pay property tax. And what if a very, very small percentage of that went towards a language back, land back initiative so that everybody who pays property tax, they're going to end up paying like a few $100 more every year, right? Deal with it. And then that money funnels specifically into, and there's some politics here in terms of who manages this, and it's got to be pretty transparent. But I think half of the money should go towards language revitalization programs. And of course, people who hear me say that are probably going to say, you just want to give yourself more money. It's like, shut up. And then the other half goes towards purchasing land. Because I want to tell you something, like if we want to have a cultural gathering here in Juneau of our people, where are we going to have it? Probably at the Methodist camp or maybe at the shrine, which are pretty amazing facilities, but there's something kind of just, if we just talk about the thing, like it's a little bit strange to pay a Christian organization to go do a gathering on their land for our language when there's this complicated history there. And so I think if we had these sort of funds, we could like purchase a place that's just ours. That's a gathering place for our culture, for our language. And especially if you can create some places in your community where you say, cross this threshold, you speak the language, right? So we can gear up, we do all this work in the what do they call it, in the front room, in the porch area. They say, okay, we're getting ready to go in. We're going to go in. We got to leave our English right here. Then you go in. So I do think these things are possible. And I do think, even though there's still resistance, it's getting easier to talk about social accountabilities like this, to say, this is everybody's responsibility now. If you want to learn it, learn it. If you want to use it, use it. If you don't, you're still going to support it, And so, and then I want to share Oh wait, anybody got any thoughts on that? So I'm gonna start sending this idea around, seeing how we can make it happen. We got some people in the assembly. I think Juno could be sort of the first one to figure out how to do it. Okay. And then I thought, since we're talking about babies, I'm going to show you guys a video of when we went to culture camp in Yakutat. And it was just me and my son, and he would read me books at night. Because like these alphabet books are important, right? Because then you got to think about what are all the components that go into this? Probably board books and, you know, like a whole kit of things. Posters, handbooks, recordings, videos, and stuff so that people can be around it. So I'll share this with you. Let's see. And he's going to read. It's very cute.
Dada. Dada. Kitty. 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 So, then look. We knock. We knock. Then Dada.
So he starts in English and then he switches, like, so he switches over at a certain point, and then like, there's another video where he kept reading it. And so, but just like the other thing is, when you're going to raise kids in a language, you got to play the long game. That means you can't worry if they're not responding to you. You can't worry if they're, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff you're going to have to figure out. And you're also going to have to realize that neither of you need to translate for people. You can, but then like it gets a little bit, there's some family politics here, which could be, you might have to say to your partner, say, I can translate for you anytime, but it might have to be later. Because if you always have to say it in both languages, then I think the kid's gonna see like that's not the real language. You gotta switch to the real language. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff to that too. And I think where I was as a speaker of Tlingit before we had kids was like pretty low. Actually, it was like I could memorize. I had a whole bunch of stuff memorized. I was getting to learn how verbs work. But once I made that commitment to say only Tlingit with the kid, then there's so much stuff. Then I had to figure out too, like it's very common for languages to just become classroom languages where suddenly you can't do a whole bunch of, you can't do like just day-to-day regular communication. And that's once you start sort of committing to speaking to each other in the language and speaking to kids like in full length, not just like the hi, how are you, how's the weather, now let's switch to English, but to really push it beyond that, which is the living, breathing language. I think those are some things that you do realize. Any other thoughts on that?
While we're talking about babies and little ones, I've wanted to mix sign language before with learning Indigenous languages because I think it would help for little kids because sometimes they're neurodivergent people who sign instead. And so I think it'd be really cool for little kids to learn their Indigenous language, but also to be able to learn how to communicate with neurodivergent people without translating or anything or whatever. But I'm perplexed, I don't know, whatever, because I know that there used to be some form of sign language already in Tlingit, or so I've heard some of. But I thought of kind of taking on what Kyle Worrell did and mixing in American Sign Language. And so for like signs for words for things like water, in American Sign Language, you use W to your chin, that's water. But what he does is the sign H to your chin for heen. And so I kind of like that idea, but I didn't know how that would work. I want to be able to be very inclusive with multiple Indigenous languages, especially Khatkil, since I feel like Tlingit and Khatkil should be merging way more and spending more time because, I mean, in old days, I'm sure we all were multilingual, so I think it'd be great to bring that back. But so, give me opinions, you guys. What should I do? Should I just go in and mix with American Sign Language, or should I try and work with Sarah Tukshake, to like make a mix?
Yeah, it's a great question. So like there's some sign language that folks might be using that are from the Where Are Your Keys methodology. We use sign language quite a bit with our kids just because when they're in daycare, they used a lot of sign language there. And so we learned a lot through the daycare, but that actually really helped us because it became a bridge language. That way, you could say, you gotta go poop, or you could say, "Iitke," it's uwaha, or you could go like that, right? So you had like three options, and we also found like really cute moments too, where baby number two, she was like she'd get really hungry fast, right? And so she would go, she'd say "Tsuk, please, tsuk, please." So she would be using all three languages at the same time, and she ha ha ha, because she was hungry, and so. I think it's a really good idea for multilingual households, and I think we should re-envision what we are doing here so that we're getting our three languages together more to share with each other. Like, and the pandemic did impact us, and also this is the first, always keep in mind, you folks are the first ones to go through this program. I'm not trying to say it as an excuse. I'm just trying to say, like, how do we keep building it stronger? And that and the nice thing is there's no established tradition. So we can establish some of these traditions. Like we could do a thing once a month where let's just do a 30-minute lesson in each of our languages, and let's learn some of this stuff so that we can greet each other in multiple languages, and we can also, as we sort of learn more about how to do this stuff, which is how to live with it ourselves and how to teach other peoples, that then we can sort of relate to each other a lot more in terms of what we're trying to do, and really get into the resource and idea sharing. Because I also think like everything that we can do, like it should be easy to replicate, right? Like, so here's the thing. Okay, we made these illustrations, we made this book, we made this other thing. Let's put this out in three languages, and we're looking at adding a fourth, let's not forget that. And it might be things like so the other versions might be different, and that's okay. But just in terms of like trying to sort of nudge the thing together, like I think this is leaning us towards this next conversation, which is like thinking of our final paper. I was also thinking of the kind of a dream session. And by a dream session, I mean like it's easy to see the things that we don't have. But like, what if we said, okay, what if we were in charge? What if we were the collective government now of this region of Tlingit territory and Haida territory and Tsimshian territory. Forget Alaska, forget Canada and British Columbia and Yukon. Like if we're in charge, and it's just like from the perspective of the languages, like we're not going to talk about like some other stuff, but what do we do? What do we need? Where do we go from here? And I think this might help us with this 30-year vision exercise. But also, I didn't mean it to just be the three languages, but also Inupiaq and also Koyukon and also our other languages that we're working in. Well, what do we need? What's going to help?
I stepped away for a minute. Is this a question for right now for discussion, or are you opening up a document?
Both. I'm trying to figure out this mural. Here we go. Let's try. Let me try this. I haven't done this in a while, so let's see.
You know, I like Skanjat, the presentation you had with your kids, you know, like having a kit and being able to put things around the house. It's awesome. But somehow we gotta figure out how to like get people who want to learn to like build their own kit, because that's what's going to help them, really. I mean, that's what's helped all of us. Like you said, Une, it really helped when you had kids and you're like, okay, gonna do it. And you know, for me at the house, just do it. And then hearing my kids speak Tlingit first and instead of English, I was like, all right, got to do it. Like I got to push myself to want to do it, and not like, how can you help me put this together? Where do I start to learn? Because you should know where to learn. I mean, you should be learning how to say the sounds. I mean, pretty much with like any language, you got to know the alphabet, right? Like, and that's one thing we don't have is an alphabet. Like we should be having some kind of song and an alphabet, because like every language in the world's got an alphabet song. It's something we don't have yet.
Yeah, like in Hawaiian, they have what they call a syllabary. So they made a song which is every vowel consonant combination. But I think no way. You want to talk about the alphabet that Nay has? I say just put that in the chat.
Well, it's hard sort of to explain, but she like moves through, she'll like introduce one consonant sound like tla, and then she'll, or you know, like the TL, and then she'll go through through a song of all the vowel combinations that could happen, you know, tla, tla, clay, tla, you know, that sort of stuff. And she's got like a song that goes to it, sort of, that's like that I really like it. I can't, she does it way better than I could, but I saw her do it a bunch this summer, and it works really well because you can get through a bunch of different sound combinations really quickly.
Yeah, that's great. And like you could make stuff too. Like, and as we talk about like sort of making stuff, like I think there's a real instinct to sort of go grab like a bunch of nursery rhymes and just sort of like everything sounds like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or Row 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 Your Boat or whatever. And I think those are okay starting places, but I think you also got to just make your own things. And so, but those are other things too. Like if you got 61 letters, you're just gonna have a long alphabet song, but that doesn't mean the whole thing has its own melody. Like I would just print out a little alphabet chart and I'd sit down with my kid and I go uh uh and then I would do all the vowels and I would do cha cha and just I'd go and it would take us all day long, but whatever, you know. But that's the other thing too, is like if you just have more sounds, like Hawaiian has like 11 sounds or something like that, so it's, you know, oh, Twinkle, they're all the same song. All those nursery rhymes are the same song. The alphabet song? Oh, yeah, they are. That's right. That's why I thought of them. Okay. So I thought we'd just do a little brainstorm here. So just thinking of, and I know we've done something similar to this before, but what I'm thinking is like, there's just these lists of sticky notes, and we can always make more sticky notes. But let's just start with this. On the left side, we have, what do we have? And on the right side, we have, what do we need? And I'm going to keep it fairly open here, just in terms of like, maybe you've got some audio recordings. And maybe you have a dictionary. But then maybe what do you need? Maybe you need recordings of household phrases. Whoops, where'd that thing go? So thinking of like trying to get a 30-year vision, right? So for me, there's a whole bunch of stuff I think about, like, dang it, I keep touching the mouse. The mouse is the thing on top of it. So, like, we need a language center, and there should be, and this is something, like, so as we look at these sort of, there is the Alaska Native Language Center, but then every community should probably have at least one language center. And some of those communities should have multiple languages. Like, we just know, if you look at the Alaska Native Language Center map, which is wonderful, there are communities on there that are multilingual, and we just know they are. They speak Inupiaq and Koyukon in some of these communities. And, and so those are places where there a language center maybe is a languages center. What else do we need? We need what else do you have?
We have workbooks.
Maybe we need more maybe you need more worksheets for, like, because maybe, like, for thing, and each language is going to have different scenario, but we've got a bunch of things that document, like, how the language works, but we need a bunch more worksheets on, like, here's how you learn this stuff, and here's how you internalize this stuff, and here's how you do this thing. Alphabet songs.
Daughter for Thanksgiving. So we're gonna take off tomorrow. Or I am.
What else? I need
We have our stories, but we need more language books and more language videos.
and are those stories in Hutkill?
Yeah, we have lots of stories in the Hod Kill, traditional stories. But I'd like to see, more language books and videos. Okay, you already put that there.
There was this, we're kind of talking about this today, these kits to sort of bring the language back to the home. And trying to envision what those kits could be.
I think Cogkill needs like a framework or curriculum so that every teacher isn't recreating the wheel every time, so that the teacher could step in and say, okay, you guys are at this level, then I know where to pick up and I know what you guys should know. Right now, I don't think we have a organized frame.
Yeah, and I would love to help with that. What I could bring is sort of like what we did for Tlingit, because we had stuff kind of like, but I do think a lot of it was built on this sort of beginning Tlingit workbook, which then it was like beginning Tlingit, and then it became beginning Tlingit workbook. But it's sort of like if you studied, Hutkil, you got to do these things. And then a teacher could always do more. But that way there's a reference point to come and say, oh, you guys did chapter 7 already? Okay, let's do chapter 8, right? And so you do have this sort of, at least you do this thing, then this thing, then that thing. And you could always do more. You just sort of getting that pathway, I think, is really good. What else? What else do we have in need? There's video recordings.
I think we need more math books, for a math book for each language. In Shamalia, there's like 7 or 8 different ways for counting, and most people just stick with the abstract. But if you use abstract when you're counting people, it's not good. It's like really disrespectful.
You're a thing, and that's a thing, and that's another thing.
Or you work for me for free.
We probably need living wages. I think we talked about this a little bit in the last class, right? So like, I feel like your average school teacher, which is a wonderful job and they absolutely deserve it, but I think these days in Alaska, they're making somewhere around $80,000 to $100,000. And I think that's what a language teacher should be paid. And so I think those things need to be on the table, because one of the things I think that capitalism systems do is they hide how much money people make, right? And I don't think that's a good way to go about it, but I think it's also awkward. Those are awkward conversations. But I think, okay, to do this type of work, it's a lot, and I think we should just assess how much our teacher's making, because there's some folks from a community that are in this class. I don't want to say the community, but I was looking at this study of folks, and like the average salary of the community was like about $24,000. Then if you looked at the average salary of white people in the community, it was over $100,000. And so like this disparity, I think, is there, and I think it presents itself in this type of work. And I think some of the things that should happen is we should push back on that, and we should actually, like if money is the thing that we're dealing with, then we have to make sure that we're getting the share to the people who are doing this type of work. And that's part of our job, is to advocate for that. There was an entity, I won't say who, that ran a language nest. And then they also started a daycare. And when the language nest folks found out that they were making less money than the people in the daycare, they get really upset, because they like, don't you value us? Don't you value what we're doing? And so like those are some things, and to make sure that those, so it's not just living wages. I think it's equitable pay, right? Because we're not just talking about enough to get by. Because this is the other thing too. I think that there's a weird stereotype here that if you want to do language work, you should do it because you love it and not because you want to make money. But I think, you know what, like why, it comes down to this stuff. I've seen project after project after project. I'll get paid $30 an hour, an elder gets paid $30 an hour. They pay someone to come and film us, and they pay them $300 an hour. They pay someone to write a grant, and they pay them $100 an hour. And it comes down to these things, which is like what we show, what we value. And I think these are some things, and these are some things that are a little bit beyond us sometimes, but we can also be the ones, and we have people out there who could be the spark plugs who help to instigate some of these changes. Like we know people who are on the tribal councils. We know people who are leaders in some of these organizations. And I think we also need, coming back to this land back initiative and this other thing, like we need sustainable funding. So that it's not grant run, and it's not like we got to go find all this money to do this stuff ourselves. But every school in the state also receives a pretty sizable amount of money. I have to find out what I think it's like $13,000 per child. So every school is getting like something like $13,000 per child, right? So then if you think about that, maybe there's, let me find a calculator. So how many kids, like if you got in a small community, you might have 100 students. That means that that's $1,300,000 coming in for the kids every single year. And so there needs to be a head count type of thing as well. Like I don't know the long-term solutions here, but also I think like the state of Alaska and the federal government, the state government are not doing anything just in terms of like fully funding these types of initiatives. And also there's, yeah, so that's just like the standard money. And then there's, as Hanjat pointed out, there's disability funding and there's funding for being Native American. So there is JOM funding and other things that's coming into these institutions. There's Title III monies that's coming into higher education institutions. Like the Ketchikan campus, okay, here's a little insider thing. I'll drag this institution out to though. We were having some conversations about whether or not, so when we're trying to get Simshan, intermediate Simshan 1 and 2.
But don't worry, he's just talking about the same thing. Wait.
Rude.
You better hit your mute button.
Ishan. Ikaw ay Juan.
So when we were trying to get intermediate Simshan 1 and 2 and advanced Simshan 1 and 2 onto the books, we were getting some pushback, which was saying like, well, we don't want to have to teach these classes, and if we put them on the books, we have to teach these classes. And I said, well, you should have to teach these classes. You should be obligated, and you should feel good about teaching these classes. And our university gets money every single year because the Ketchikan campus is proximal to an Indian reservation. And because of that, it automatically qualifies for this Title III funding, which it gets. And so do you ask that community how you spend that money? Or do you just spend it how you want to spend it? And so these are some things as well, which is there's some other concept here, which I think I would just say is sovereignty, that there needs to be sovereignty at the table in terms of education and in terms of, so, you know, some of these things are really these sort of larger level questions. So coming back, like I know we only got 10 minutes left. So I'm gonna come back to this. Oh, I don't have to change the screen. I think I just have to change this thing. Hold on. So let me tell you what I think I'm looking for in a final paper. And I think that you can probably just copy this and just start making these your headers. So one is in the introduction, I want to be able to read this. In 30 years, the blank language will have blank speakers. Right? So this is really, you just can come right out front and say it. And give your, like, really think about what that number should be. So this should be a combination of the population of the people who are descendants of the language, right? So Tlingit people, Haida people, Tsimshian people, Nupiaq people. How many are there in the world? And Nupiaq's a little different because you also have Inuit and you have, but you know, I'm just talking about like the people who are descended from the language, not the relative languages. Then also think about how many people are in your region. And then think like the year is 2050. And and just think of this, like if we were to say we succeeded, right? Because we're all maybe ready to retire at that time, I don't know. There will be this many speakers. And then your introduction paragraph could have a bit more, like kind of summarize the things maybe a little bit that you're talking about. But then I would like to see current resources, right? So in here, like who is doing what? What do you have? How is it organized? Are new speakers being made? So these are some of the fundamental things that I think about. And some of this, like, who all are the players? Like, there's maybe See Alaska is in there. Maybe it's, so maybe it's a heritage nonprofit. Maybe it's school districts. Maybe, and remember early in the semester we did this exercise, like who is all connected to your language? And so maybe there's an ANCSA corporation. Maybe there's a tribe. Maybe there's multiple. But I want you to kind of make a running list of who's doing what. And you don't have to criticize what they're doing at all, but just summarize. And it doesn't also have to go into like, here's 5 pages on Doyon and what they're doing. Like just do it in a paragraph, just very short. Here's who this group is doing this. This group is doing this. This group is doing this. And then sort of wrap it up with like, is this collectively enough? And then I would probably say resources needed. And so when I'm talking about like, what do you have? I'm thinking of corpus work. So do you have a functioning and current, well, let me make this bigger, sorry, typing on a tiny screen. So do you have a dictionary? Do you have a grammar? Do you have a workbook? Do you have worksheets? Do you have stuff for kids? Do you have toys? Like, this one student, he was talking about, well, what I'd like to do is just make some toys that speak the language, right? My kids get toys, they think it's fun. It's like Woody, and they pull the string, and he says all the lines from Toy Story. Well, where's our things? And I think they could happen. Everybody remember Teddy Ruxpin?
It'd be, you got me on the toy thing. It'd be really cool if it was like a raven and you pulled a string and he said a quote from a Raven story.
Yeah, well, so like, yeah, I feel like it could be done. Teddy Ruxpin was like a teddy bear, and you put a cassette tape in his back. This is long ago. Oh, long ago. And he would move his mouth as the thing was. And what was wild is you could put any tape in there. A friend of mine took his apart, or his older brother did, and he made a little cow, and he made a telephone out of it. So when you're talking to someone, the cow was talking whenever the person was talking. It was pretty cool. But so like, those are things, so when you think about resources needed as well, like it could come up to this stuff, but it's sort of like 30 years from now, what do you think we should have? And so this is beyond like, this is what we need right now. So, but maybe there's 2 sections, which is resources needed, and then maybe there's a section called like dreaming big. And here, the resources needed, I think, is going to be sort of short-term needs. And this is going to be long-term needs. And for resources, I'm thinking of probably a lot more of the physical things, right? Because now I want to talk about the last 2 big sections here. And I think this is probably all we need. So here we've got, this. What I want to call this so then this is what I'm thinking. So, and I think this should be your whole paper. And let me know what you think. So I think you should have an introduction. You should list out your current resources. You should talk about your resources needed. Dream big. This is where like, we'll have toys in the language. We'll have a smart house that I could say, house, how do you say tie your shoes? So it could just remind me. It could just pull this phrase up and spit it out in the language, or whatever the thing is. The last 2, like, if I were just to say it, I would say, if our people stay the same, we'll lose our language. And if the institutions stay the same, we'll lose our language. So what needs to change? So in here, what we're looking for is, yeah, Samuel Jackson's voice, and say, "Itishi Kaduk," and then he'll yell at you. He'll say, what's he gonna say? This was our equivalent for the thing that he yells a lot in Pulp Fiction. Shekusani, that's what it is. Shekusani would be you ugly. So personal transformations is like, here's the big question. How do we get people to choose the language? And then I guess for daily communication, and then the institutional transformations is, what do we construct, right? Is it language nests, language medium schools? Is it, you look at Gaelic, you look at some other languages, they built whole communities, just whole communities that were removed, right? And so, but maybe that is part of it too. And here's the kicker, okay? Through all of this, I don't want you to think about money at all. I don't want you to think about like, well, we should do this, but I don't know where we're, like, don't put money into this at all. So don't let money factor into anything that you're thinking. Just go big in your visioning session. And when we have our final class, which will be December 13th, I would like to hear a summary of this from all of you. And so there's like 15 of us, so we can only take like, 5 to 10 minutes. It shouldn't take longer than, well, we had 90 minutes together, so it's gotta be kind of short. What is that? How long do we have? 90 minutes, 15 people? 6 minutes. So if everyone gets a 5-minute presentation to just give us an overview, and then you'll, let me take a look at a calendar.
The ultimate elevator pitch.
That's right. Once it hits 5 minutes, be like, you're done. You'll get your idea now. I'm just kidding. So, but just try to.
Next.
That's right. I'll bring in a panel and we'll have that. Who was the guy that was always mean on the singing thing? Simon. I'll bring Simon in. Okay. So that's what we're doing. So on the 13th, you will be giving your elevator pitch of the whole thing, your summary, and then let me give you a deadline. And I'll email this so everybody has it. So the 13th is on a Monday. So let's say the 17th. I don't want to take any papers after December 17th. How's that? Okay. Any questions? Everybody okay?
I think I started drafting some ideas on funding sources. That was something we mentioned previously. Should I remove that element or just leave it in as a vague brainstorm?
Yeah, just leave it in. Yeah. I guess the only thing I'm not like putting a prohibition on funding and talking about it, but I don't want that to be your framework, because then I think you might end up limiting yourself. But yeah, if you want to include that stuff, great, because I think especially if you have ideas on how to rethink the ways that we go after and sustain ourselves, and that'd be great. Okay.
Are we gonna present to your puppet?
Yes, yeah, the puppet. I'll practice. I'll draw some frowny eyebrows on him. They'll be real furrowed. Or maybe he'll just nod and listen. And then there was a language learner. I won't say who because it's controversial. But he said we should make puppets are like those two old guys in the Muppets that just laugh at everything and make fun of everybody. Because we're getting, we're getting a little bit of hate from some people. So, anyways, I don't want to get into that. Yeah, let's see. Email this link to all of us and on the class so we have the extra sense. What are you talking about, Suzu? I want to make sure I understand.
You already said you would. And so then I added the thank you.
Oh.
Project, the final project, so that it's not just here that we hear it and it's not just in the chat. So when we lose it and we're like, I'm ready to get started, then we have the official email that goes to everybody, including those that might not be here right now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, so here's the link again in the chat. And I'll include it in the email, and I'll also just pull from this, and I'll kind of summarize the things that we talked about here. So I'll send that out in the next day or so. And have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next Monday. Enjoy your long weekend and eat good food if that's what you're doing, and hang out with good people if that's what you're doing. And take a break, but then also be ready for the final stretch. See you, folks. Deutschen.
Finish cheese.
Sheesh.
No,